you have soft skills and hard skills, right? Communication falls under your soft skills, weapons, driving, all that kind of stuff falls under your hard skill sets. I look at it a lot like how the military structures things, right? You have 6-8 guys in a team. They may have different purposes, but each one knows one level up, one level down.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Executive Protection Skills Gaps. Today we're delighted to be joined by Steve Hernandez, CEO of the North Group, as well as Craig McKim, co-founder Maverick Protection Group. This is a pre-recorded session that we ran at the Corporate Security Modernization Forum Great Lakes, and much as our session with Sandra Stibbards, I think this is an excellent look at some of the wider contextual questions that executive protection is finding itself facing. We're going to be looking not just at the soft versus hard skills debate, not that that's not a problem, but we're also going to be looking at the way in which executive protection needs to harness the power of technology. Not that technology in itself is a skill set, it's just more an appreciation of maybe analytics, maybe using threat intelligence modeling, and really finding ways to add value as a professional today. And I think that actually blends rather nicely with some of the previous episodes we did. I remember with Christian West, we talked about the emergence of the technical executive protection officer. So there will be a blend of that. Obviously, networking. We have Mr. Networking, Craig McKim, on with us. But we're also going to look at the structure of the team. If people are finding it very difficult to recruit, then is there any sense in going hyper-specialist with your requirements? Are we not going to, simply not fulfill tasks because we are looking out for that special individual rather than the generalist? And of course, every type of debate in between. Well, this was a fantastic session, and of course, ahead of the IPSB, it's lovely to get a sense of the skills that we're going to be talking about, for the next year. So let's welcome Craig McKim, co-founder Maverick Protection Group, and of course, Steve Hernandez, CEO of the North Group.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit Magazine.
We are live at the Corporate Security Modernization Forum Great Lakes, and we are very pleased to welcome Steve Hernandez, CEO for the North Group, as well as Craig McKim, Chief Networker at Maverick Protection Group. What an interesting segue. We're going to talk modernization, but looking at the skills for the EP professional of tomorrow, or the corporate security professional of tomorrow. Now, of course, we can embody kindness in said skills, but we're still going to have to balance that people, policy, procedure, and tech dynamic. As some people have mentioned, a completely big revamp of this skill set. Stephen, what is the current EP skills gap that we're seeing today? Because we are told we cannot find enough operators, we cannot find enough professionals. So before we wonder what the future skill set is, what are we looking for now?
Yeah, well, thank you first off, and thank you, Craig, for joining with me here. I think it's dependent on the clients that we're dealing with, the threat landscape of those customers, but we're seeing a lot of technology gaps. We're seeing folks that don't understand how to collectively build a threat matrix using social media and intelligence, and I think that's hindering. I think the other side of it is the assessment of where their team needs to go to progress the client's advancement as far as safety, security, and liability.
And then I guess maybe building on that, Craig, obviously you're a relatively young organization, but what are you looking for that maybe you cannot find?
So I think what we're I agree with Steve. For sure. I'm one of I'm one of the gaps on the technology side. We're looking, we want, I mean, for one, for just for the, kind of for the company's sake, we want people that are amenable to learning the new skills, whatever it is that they would be. Technology. I mean, I'm part of, I'm Gen X, so I'm like, I was before all the technology kind of, and now I'm living in it, and I know that I'm well behind probably where I should be, but those are the people that we do look for also too, right? But so there's that piece of it, and I feel like I'd be speaking out of turn on the technology piece. So sticking in my lane of where I see it, and Phelim, I'm sure you know where I'm going here, and if any of you know me for any length of time, like I go back to the interpersonal skills. Can you learn kindness? I think you probably can. I think you probably have to if you don't already practice it. But then where else? Obviously I could go right back to networking, but what are your conversational skills? All the hard skills, the things that we talked about, like the cool stuff, the whatever that sells tickets, the handgun skills, the martial arts, the physical part of it. That is a given. That's where you should be. That's where you should be operating from. Now, everybody's going to be at different levels depending on when you got in and all that stuff, but you're continually building on them. But also, when do you have the chance to use those? Well, it's once you get hired, once you start your company. So what helps you get hired? What helps you start a company? A networking, I can draw a straight line from Maverick, where we are right now with Maverick to where I met Dave and the relationship that we had before we started the company. And that started by literally delivering a networking presentation. So, with that, like, great, you have all those hard skills, keep doing it, but you have to network your face off and you have to get good at it. And the bar or the level of entry to start building a network is not high. And it could simply come from what we were just talking about, is being kind to people. I put out, I don't know how many videos talking about just like, here's information, just take it, do with it what you will. But, but then let's build on top of it. Do I need conversation? Yeah, you need conversational skills. Taking an etiquette class, right? And understanding what's acceptable, or just taking a culture class about where, if you live elsewhere, you're traveling elsewhere, what's acceptable, what's not. And one thing, and this is going to be kind of a left turn around skills that you should have when you're just coming into this, especially if you're a younger person, or you are, you're coming, I guess I could go of all these places you're coming from, but financial skills. When you start throwing some decent money at people that haven't had it before, or that don't understand how credit works, don't understand how how I don't understand a budget. Like, it seems so so basic that sometimes you look past it. But those are conversations that we that we're having with the guys that are guys and gals that are coming in. Of here are some of the things that that you'll have to think about. Like, we're not asking you what what are your monthly expenses, but you definitely need to know how to manage this. And Dave's way better at that than I am, but we still at least ask them to think about that and spend time thinking about that. And if you don't have those skills, whether it's networking or conversational or technology, or pick a place and start there. Pick a place that might benefit your company the most. Pick a place that might benefit you the most, right? There's going to be people that say you should have this. Well, okay, I'm not necessarily interested in that, but I want to become a more complete person, a more complete protector, more complete business owner. Then, pick some place and start there. And that takes decision-making skills. And so okay, what is that going to be for me?
And so that sounds a little bit like the Ghostbusters, who you're going to call strategy, rather than the it's all me, because it means the communication piece ties everything together. Steve, how then can we balance that with having a team? Because maybe the future skill set is not a person, it's a team.
Well, I think it's important what Craig just said, right? And you have soft skills and hard skills, right? Communication falls under your soft skills, weapons, driving, all that kind of stuff falls under your hard skill sets. I think you have, I look at it a lot like how the military structures things, right? You have 6, 8 guys in a team. They may have different purposes, but each one knows one level up, one level down, what the other one's supposed to do if something goes wrong or something happens to one of the team members. So I think we follow that doctrine when we have a team-oriented environment for an operation, especially if we're dealing with OCONA stuff, where we have overseas, things going on and the threat matrix is a little higher, right? We're heavy on medical. We're heavy on folks that have, TCCC or a tactical medical background. And that's a really good place to focus here, right? Because as an organization, we are helping people reduce liabilities, right? I mean, people hire security, in my opinion, for 4 reasons: legal liability, financial liability, life safety liability, and then insurance liabilities, right? That's where I see most of our clients go. So if you look at this from that perspective, everything we do in the team has to be able to counteract one of those liabilities. And we can't focus all on life safety liabilities, right? I mean, because then, you got to have kind of the thinker, the intel folks, right, or the tactical medical person. But you also have to have is folks that can do kind of the command and control. A great friend of mine has an acronym. We were just talking about it the other day, called CAS, which is command and control, angles, speed, and surprise. And when you start to think about that, that's more of a tactical reference. But what it does is, when you look at a team movement or a team effort, command and control is everything. And in the corporate security world, right, that's dictated through policy. So if we don't have good policies and when things go wrong, then we're kind of reacting at haste. So one of the things we do, especially with some of our embedded work, is we let the embedded director or CSO or what have you, they build their policies out, but then it comes back to our corporate arm. And then we matrix that up with threat intelligence to make sure we're really on the X here, because intelligence drives operations and we can't lose that. I truly believe that the industry can't lose intelligence driving operations, because that's when we miss things. And we've seen bad intelligence and operations badly. We've seen good intelligence, have great outcomes. So I think it's one of those things that when we focus on this as a team, we have to put things in different buckets, and we have to have everybody focused on kind of their niche, but everybody needs to know one up, one down. And then as organizations, I think it's structured the same way, right? If you have a director of operations and we have a GSOC, our GSOC management needs to know what the director of operations is doing on a daily basis, and then down 2 steps as well. So it's the same with Intel, our Intel department, right? The director of operations needs to know what's going on in Intel, just in case he needs to staff them for some sort of threat matrix development. So it's this constant evolution. I think, and a business term, right? Blind spots. I think everybody's familiar with that, right? Know your blind spots. Where you're not capable, hire out. If you lose your financial controller, outsource that for the time being, right? It's kind of collective organizational growth there. I think that's very relevant to our industry, because when we miss something, right, it can go pretty wrong. If we don't have a policy in place for an issue that occurs, but yet we're the policy writer, or we're the policy creator, or the explorer, if you will, we fail. I think that we could talk about hard skills all day, but to Craig's point, the soft skills and the communication is so important, because I'll own this. I failed at this when I first started, right? I was an infantryman. I wanted to just act like an infantryman when I first started in this industry, but I had to quickly learn that there was no place for that. There was absolutely no place for that. And I had great mentors that would grab me by the collar early on and give me that wisdom and knowledge. So it's really interesting to see the dynamic of our industry evolve. As far as the future, real quick, where I think we're going, when I say tech, I think tech will drive a lot of our operational policies and the things we do. but we can never lose the human touch, the kindness, as Craig said.
And I love that, because that's how you get things done. That's how you facilitate. There are some countries where EP is not strictly speaking allowed, but facilitation is very much allowed. And so, as Alan says, the leader of the future must be able to position it as a business enabler, not just a cost center. Better breaks, you can go faster. What do you think, Craig? Because there's a number of future offerings that EP could get involved in.
Yeah, I think that is. There was, I'm having a hard time remembering who it was. I was working when I still lived out in Vegas, and I was working with somebody, and they talked about facilitation, right? There's a protective role, but why are we there? As Steve said, all the liabilities, all the countless liabilities that we deal with, not only for ourselves, but as a business owner, responsible for the people that work for us, and then the people that we're protecting or that we're serving, and then all, and that's the sub. There's a lot of places the end provider, they're managing. But I think as far as into the future of what where EP goes, I think and that depends on. It also depends on the company, what they want to be known for. And Steve said, I came in, I was an infantryman, and that's what I know. So that's what I'm going to be. And it's like, all right, And to his credit, he figures that out probably pretty quickly, and navigates through that. And so, because an infantryman can probably only serve a couple of different clients, couple different something, but you're more. You're more skilled. You're kinder. All these things that we can build on top of. The more that and the more skills that each company has because of the people that they've put in place, or the people they put in place because of the company they have, can really start to to start to manage. Talking to a friend of mine, it's probably about a year ago. I remember him saying this. He's like, we as protectors, we've helped people buy properties. We've helped people buy cars. We've helped them facilitate travel, but not only for them, but for their entourage, or we've helped coordinate bringing people in. I mean, it's like travel agent, sales consultant, marketing consultant. I mean, like there's all these things, especially as a business owner. It's like you're touching all those things, and why not drop that on on your whomever you're working with, whoever that next person up in line is, from you, with whether it's the sub or the client or the protectee. And so, I think you can get, the right company with the right people can get their hands, I hesitate to say into anything because it's like they're not supposed to be there. But I think, the capability of the people and a lot of times the people in this industry specifically are hard chargers. And, and being able to rein that in and still produce with energy and still, go get them. It's like, I don't know how to do that, but I will figure it out as we're going. And then you have your team that you can either hire out to, or you've put them through a school that they're able to help. So you kind of make it a team, Well, hopefully it's a team environment anyway, but team projects of, hey, I think we can do this for our company or for our clients or for this client or our clients moving forward. We're going to start talking about this more because this is something that we can do. And not only be the one-stop shop, but I mean, it kind of becomes that for things that, if you can take away the friction in your client's life for anything, I think you're moving ahead. And I think the level of person that EP pulls in or can pull in, especially the ones that are consistently evolving, I think you can really help affect change with any of your clients in the future.
Yeah, and that would be the end result. That's our goal. And as Tim in the audience says, I love the 360 view of risks that Stephen shared. He manages his team by operations. So important to identify your stake in each aspect of your client's risk and let them know how you're doing part. Could also get you brought to the table more often. So Steve, then just touching on this extra technical skill, it has been suggested by people that we know, right? That maybe there should be a TEPO. in your team, somebody like that guy off Mission Impossible with all the technical skills, or girl, I think in the latest episode, and is that really where it's going to be? We're going to hive off to have maybe a tactical medic if permissible, a paramedic if affordable, and then this extra person, the TEPO, or will we blend that technical acumen across the whole team, Steve?
So, when you're talking about, let's say, the private high net worth client space, I think that a lot of the requests we get in are they've had some sort of cybersecurity concern, PII leak, or something of that nature, right? And then when we investigate that, it spans into kind of the physical security space, from the technical space. So I think the way we look at problem sets is, and I want to focus just on the private client here for a second, because it's different in the corporate security space, right? When we see the need for, say, an embedded cyber type folks, what we look at is, what is the cost to do nothing for the customer? Right. So what is the cost? And we use a matrix for that, right? I mean, risk equals threat times vulnerability divided by countermeasures times impact, right? 0.0134 multiplied by the value of assets, right? Pi square. So, I mean, we make it mathematical and quantitative, right? We understand that if they do nothing, this is the risk. If they have these assets unsecured, this is the risk. For me, it's about, I've always wanted to figure out ways to make quantitative risk, put a number to it, and then show them why they should pay X. Where when I started off in the industry, I didn't see people doing that. I saw people reacting to a lot of different scenarios, which is great, right? I mean, that's where the industry was. Where we now see is threat matrices and intelligence are driving operations in the commercial space. When you have a corporate security situation, like, if you service a healthcare network, it's a really great example. And a neighboring healthcare network just had a cyber breach. That infrastructure has its IT department, and you will get slapped if you step on an IT department corporately most times. And it's a big fallacy that corporate security and cyber security are connected, because mostly they're not, right? So, but at the same time, when you have physical security issues around server rooms and things like that, IT security then becomes a physical security issue. So being able to assess that, and the way we look at that is, are your teams assessing on an RA platform, or risk matrix platform, or a risk assessment platform that allows you to, again, give the client some empirical data on where their gaps are, where their blind spots are? I think that more and more teams are going to go towards this because it's full service, right? And the revenue generation, I go on for hours about cyber. Revenue generation on cyber is insane. I mean, the margins can be north of 200% in some regards, because it's a skill set. It's a very perishable skill set. And if you don't know it well, then you're kind of not called into the room. So when you see these teams get structured this way, and you mentioned paramedics, EMTs, we've used, like overseas, we use a lot of former 18 Deltas, right? These are special operations medics. They have a level of capability in the field versus what a paramedic would. But there's a cost with that, right? Sometimes north of $1,800 a day to bring that person out. Tactical medics, right? We've got doctors that we've used. I mean, we had a situation somewhere in the Midwest where just one of the clients had gotten sick, and come to find out it was COVID. And we had a doctor that we've worked with, and we called him, and he just handled it. He took care of the client. It wasn't, it was, but if you don't have those resources to properly secure your client in your Rolodex, I mean, honestly, you're just leaving money on the table at that point. And you're leaving your ability to be more valuable as a company. As an individual practitioner, there's a lot of guys that do the EP stuff on their own, right? They've got a one-man shop and they're great at it. A lot of the celebrity guys are that way. So when you look at that, but I can tell you, like, a couple of the celebrity agents that I know and I've worked with in the past, these guys have a massive Rolodex to stack a team in hours when it comes to their client being threatened on social media, digging into that, They've got those resources lined out. They've got a tactical medic on speed dial. So I think it goes down to your needs analysis, right? We have to be doing that SWOT analysis, if you will, operationally, to what we need and what the customer may need. And I think you have tiers to that. I think you have, a tier one. This may be an immediate need. I need to have that closer than not, kind of a tier two need. And then you have your tier three needs, which are just, you call them when you need them. But it's really important that you look beyond your initial, say, statement of work as a provider, and you see what could pop up, what's in the blind spots out there that you haven't evaluated, and then how are you going to deal with that? Everybody should have a cybersecurity guy like one of these movies on speed dial. I mean, if you're in the security space, do you want to say no when that comes up? Because there's two types of people when it comes to cybersecurity: those that have been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked. Right?
Yeah, I like that. And I think Lee is also agreeing with you, says, love it, Steve, as always. And Jay, hi Jay, says, like Steve said earlier, regarding med driving, etc., everyone needs a solid base level, situational, and money permitting, have a specialist. Which I guess depends on the team. Because, hey, one team might need a language specialist, but you're not going to need that language for all missions. Maybe. Right. I tell you what, we're a bit out of time, but let's do this. Craig, what do you think someone could get from an event such as this, where we're striving to find out the modernization of corporate security? At the end of the event, where do you hope we might get to?
Well, I think that just the people that seem to be panelists that are out here speaking, and I like to think that I'm kind of in there, are kind of big picture thinkers, or three. I think Tim said something about 360 view, not only on your operations, but on everything, right? On, it could maybe even become like you're a better person after attending one of these events, right? Because you're understanding it, and they're forward thinking, and can you affect one person to change, right? And you get into that whole thing of like, how many people do we want to affect? Well, everyone. But where's the value for each one? And each person listening is going to find something in here, and they will definitely, whoever's watching, will find at least one thing that they can hold on to and take action around to make themselves better, which then makes their business better, or their company better, or their family better, makes them a better mom or dad, sister, brother, things like that. And not to be hokey about it, but I believe all this stuff ties into everything, into life. And I think we've probably had that conversation at one point, Phelim, it's somewhere in there. But, where do we end up at the end of this is just, more discussions about the industry as a whole, and the things that practitioners, Steve's been eloquent as hell, and I just, I can't. It's hard to stack up against that when when he has, with the way that he speaks and put things together. But he's given me things to think about, and so with that, I think that's what you did. Is it can, at the end of this, can somebody be challenged to be better at whatever it is that they do, and however that relates to the industry.
I like that, and that would be big hugs for this type of event. And Steve, what would you hope people come away from? Obviously, we're going to look at some tech. We're going to look at even online vulnerability assessments from Sandra coming up in a little bit. But what should we try and take away?
Honestly, and I don't want to piggyback Tim, Craig, and Lee in the kindness games more than I already do, but I'm gonna, because I got to meet Tim for the first time in was the last conference we went to, was at GSX, and these guys make me better just watching them be kind, and they make seeing people treat people well and seeing people inspire you. I don't think I'd be where I am without that part of our industry. It's inspiring, and I got it. My hat's off to Craig, Lee, Tim. You guys lift me up as a leader, as an entrepreneur, because like Tim said, there's days where we just want to break stuff and we're just angry, right? And it's hard being in this industry. I mean, it's hard. All I got to say is I think the community of this industry, especially our community, is close. And I know that I can reach out to Lee. I mean, I was so worried when I heard that what Lee was dealing with. I was like, oh my gosh, got to figure out, should I go see him? You know what I mean? And it's because he has been such a great friend. And I made that through this industry. And, all of these guys, most of the guys that are on here, it's about community. And I think we learn from each other, but we're not threatened by each other. We're just not. And I love that, because when I first came into the industry, it was a little different. Everybody was trying to steal everybody's clients, and everybody's like, oh, this, and it's like, there's just no room for that. As an entrepreneur, like, I just want to help people. And when I get to the moment where I don't want to, there's leaders in this industry that remind me of who I need to be. And I think that's what we get from these events, is just seeing other like-minded folks, whether it's security or whether it's just corporate tactics and how we run our companies, but it calls our own BS out. And I think that's really important. So my hat's off. I got to give credit to them.
Love it.
And you, because I mean, if we didn't have this event, if you weren't putting this on, we wouldn't all be coming together. We can't just do this in person a few times a year. I mean, this is so important that people, iron sharpens iron. It's just so important that we lean on that. So thank you for this, and thank you for putting this on.
Well, thank you. And I hope this virtual series complements as an extra meetup in your calendar. And of course, it doesn't replace meeting and, hanging out. Lee says he's got the Kleenex out. Please stop it. Mohammed says there's so much great conversation. Thanks, Craig and Steve. Natasha says, so true, kindness, collaboration, and sharing knowledge. And Shalene's clapping, Nicole's clapping. Right. Well, we're a little bit over time, but I thought that was very much worthwhile. And I really appreciate you coming on. So Craig and Steve, thanks very much. Big virtual round of applause. And I will put you back in the audience, and look forward to seeing you soon. If
Thanks,
not at
guys.
IPSB.
Yes, sir. We'll be there.
Soon. See you.
See you, bud.
Well, thank you very much, Steve Hernandez and Craig McKim. I found that really beneficial, because many times people have said there is a skills gap, and I say, okay, fine, but what? What is that gap? And what we find is it's sometimes an available candidate pool shortage rather than a particular gap, because if you are qualified, then it's more an approach to doing EP. It's more an openness to working with new technology and just looking out for your career and networking opportunities. But in that sense, it's an attitude, not an aptitude. And I think it's really nice to frame it that way, because sometimes perhaps an operator might feel intimidated by the accounting skill set. Now, nobody starting their own business needs to be an accountant, but a grasp of bookkeeping, a grasp of, entering data, is something rather key. And similarly, when you are networking, it can be quite brutal in the wrong circumstance. So that's why I'm very appreciative to have Mr. Networker Craig McKim, as well, of course, as Steve. And it was great to share their journeys. My mind is then turning to where one can put all this into practice, which is the IPSB and EP forum just slightly before it in Vegas next month. I am going to be there, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with a lot of people. I think many people will remember that I have said before I was there on the first one in 2016, then I was there 2017, 2019, and it's been a bit of a gap for me. So, really looking forward to seeing you all there. And then, of course, this will culminate in our January 26th, 8th annual Executive Security and Close Protection Technology Forum, where, again, we're talking skill set. We're talking not being afraid to ask the question, who can I call? It doesn't mean that you have to be the specialist. So, interesting. And I wonder if, with a bit of a downturn, the question of can I be selective will, really come into its own. Because if there's a lot of people that require work and there's a lot of people who have been working on their skill sets, then I think we'll see a defining factor. But that is all to be seen. So I hope you appreciated yet another slightly different approach to the Circuit Magazine podcast, in that we've literally given you a spotlight on an event we ran for the Great Lakes just a few months ago, much as we did with Sandra Stibbards. Please do listen to Sandra's great and very practical podcast session on open source intelligence for you. But yes, any additional thoughts, let me know. I think this is a good way to intersperse our usual segments. And of course, we look forward to our more traditional format returning. And don't forget, Elijah Shaw's Short Circuit will also be back with us very soon. So, thank you very much for joining us. Please give a virtual round of applause, even on this podcast, to Craig and Steve. Reach out and say hello. And we look forward to welcoming you again on another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.